Hello, I'm Eve.
And I'm Frank, the artist.
The last time we spoke to you, you were in Tanworth and Arden. When did you come back to Birmingham?
1943, yeah.
What was life like when you came back from being an evacuee?
I was hoping that I'd be a happy boy to live with my mother for the first time, which I've never done before. But she had a new husband, a stepfather, but I thought I was going to be very happy, but over the period of time, it changed. And that's became very, very sad to me, because he didn't like children, couldn't get on with them very well. He's never been brought up with the children, boys or girls, and being older being much older than normal, other people when they got married again, it was a life that completely made me very unhappy at the end. And I come to the stage where I could take no more, because every time mother said something to him, they used to take all my money off me when I was working on the farms, and then they took me the money and give me a shilling just to go to the cinema. Well, when you're growing and working, you need some buying your own clothes and that. As a boy, you're nearly 14. You're growing up where you want things more for benefit of yourself. And it didn't work out that way, because he started to get me to do heavy work. They never did any work at night. I had to do the washing up, chopping the wood, coal. When I've been working on the farm, coming home at 9 o'clock sometimes, in summer when you've been thrashing, you know. They just sat there and let me have to do everything there to clean up the house. I became a slave in the house. And I had enough, so I left home. But I said to Mother, I'll always come and see you. That's one thing I said. But don't you ever ask me to come and live with you again. I will never come and live with you again. So I moved from there, went from there down to Bourneville and lived with dear Mrs. Moore.
Was your stepfather cruel to you?
He was very cruel. To come to the stage, I was even having to defend myself. And when I get a boy of 14 and a man of 40, and he's a very violent man. Never hesitated. He wasn't a smack. It was a bit face straight in your face and everything else. And I could take no more. So I decided to leave. And that's how it came about. But I'll never go and live in that house again.
Where did you live in Bourneville, and what was it like with Mrs. Moore?
She was like a mother. And oddly enough, when I got a new job away from the farm, I was working in the rubber mill, and Mrs. Moore used to work in the rubber mill. And the next door neighbour mentioned about me living with my stepfather. She said, ask him to come and see me in the works. And she said, Frank, come and live with me. We'll see you out. We'll look after you. She got one boy as well. But when I went there, she was like a mother. I was treated exactly as a fame. She used to call me son. I used to help them. I was the happiest boy growing up and joining the Royal Army Cadets and everything else. I really got my happiness back again, which I lost while I was with my mother's. Tanworth and Arden, they were beautiful people as well. But Mrs. Moore had me right to the time when I went into the army. And that's when my life changed again.
When did you join the army?
I joined the army just before the war ended. And I was called up to go and have a medical, and that's very embarrassing. But when you go in the army, they sent me, because I was young, underaged, they sent me to do education at one school where there was an Australian teacher was in the army, and they taught us in this Warwickshire. And that's where I started to do my education. Then they sent me down to do primary training down to Cornwall, and that's where you do army training there. And every time you have to pass out for qualifications. Well, I was outstanding as regards the qualifications for the army, but not quite too good with the education. But that didn't matter. Soldiers can fight and they know what they're doing without having to have a lot of education. And there's a good many of them during the war that had no education at all, but they were good soldiers. Anyway, the point was, I loved it so much. When I did my primary training, they transferred me to the Royal West Kents in Maidstone, the infantry battalion. And that's where I started to do the wartime, of the end of the war, there, that training there. Then when I'd done the infantry training, which was about 8 weeks, or say 7 or 8 weeks, 8 weeks at least anyway, then they sent me to Egypt, and that's where I started to revive the Port Said.
What was it like in Egypt?
It was a very unusual to go into someone's country and you see the Egyptian people and the young children and everything, and they're very poor, funny enough, most of them were. And then I had to go from Port Said down to the Suez. Now the German prisoners of war were all being rounded up and put into prison camps. And so I went to the Royal West Kents as a regiment. Now while I was in there, we had to do all the guards of the prisoners, and then we started to take the prisoners over to Port Said and put them on the ship so they go back to Germany. But in that time, while they were in that camp, they invited us into the camp, some of the soldiers, and you go to be with the German people, German army. They're not all bad. There's some very religious people as well. You know, there wasn't a communist or anything like that, but they were very devoted. And when they showed me and took me into their tent, they had a church in there. And it was so lovely to see the way they have their religion respected. And also they used to make things, cigarette cases out of parts of aluminium of airplanes, cigarette cases, picture frames and all that. They came into our camp, some of them come in our camp, because the war was finished. You're making new friends, although we had a bitter feeling, and I can assure you they were very bad. But that doesn't mean to say everybody's bad. That's how that started there. Now, from there, the Royal West Kents sent me to Ismailia. Now, Ismailia, being there at that time, I had to be with the Royal West Kent Battalion there, and we had all our drills and training always kept up into that. But sadly, the Royal West Kent was going to go back to England. Now, being I'm a regular, one must do 3 years abroad all the time.
Which regiment did you join afterwards?
The Royal Sussex, they sent me into Palestine to join the Royal Sussex. Now that means to say that I've got to continue my service with the Royal Sussex. And we was at war in Palestine, very sad. And we had a lot of problems and we've been shot and fired at all the time. But we had to protect the Jews and protect the Palestinians, which was both sad, all three of us. To try and bring the peace to Palestine was a very hard situation. But they wanted to shoot the Jews and the Arabs wanted to shoot the Jews wanted to shoot the Arabs and vice versa. And we were sort of in between. So when we tried to rescue them in one ambush, we got ambushed as well. But we had more army and army cars and everything. So we actually stopped the fighting, but we took the injured or the dead back to their kibbutz with the Jewish settlements, and to the Arab in Gaza, to their villages when they've been killed and that sort of thing, when we rescued them out of an ambush. Because what they did, they rolled the rocks down the hills, blocked the roads up back front, they get trapped in. And they're both brave, but it was a shame to see this war get so bad that even at that particular time, one hotel where it had all the British staff and women and men all serving to do the job of all the work for the British Army there, to take the responsibilities, and they blew that hotel up and there was 87 killed, and that was a shock. It was the King Davis Hotel, and oddly enough I've got newspaper cuttings of it, and also the news of the whole system throughout Egypt and Palestine. I always just save them, no thought of anything else. But it was very sad really. But sadly enough, with all that, I was chosen to go to Fade to guard British brigadiers and some very high-ranking people to bring peace to the Palestine, for us British troops to withdraw. And we had to regard all these high-ranking people at night and day while I was at Fade, and then go back into Palestine. And there, when they come to withdraw, all the army from all over Rafah, Gaza, right into Jerusalem, we on one side, we was escorting the British troops out of Palestine itself. And we came up to the border of Gaza, and that's where the Royal Sussex stopped.
What happened next?
The saddest thing is that while we was on patrol, just a Bedford lorry, we had to go and do some escort. Now, we hadn't the right to go to escort these generals or officers at the time, but on our way there was just one loud bang, and now a Bedford lorry has canvas over the back, and in the lorry itself there's one wheel arch like your car. You have a wheel arch that side and one the other side of the back wheels of the rear wagon's wheel. And all of a sudden my mate, I heard this bang and he fell towards me. And it's very sad, because it's very rarely a soldier manages to call out word mother. He cried out mother, and as he come to me I caught him, and I was so shocked in the stomach. You get in such a shock, you're actually holding him and you're not realising you're suffering with pain as well, because something happened to me that I wasn't aware of. And I laid him down and I shouted to the driver, get back to the camp as quick as you can. He went as fast as that lorry could get it back to the camp. When we arrived there, we had the horns blowing so we could get straight into the camp and get the ambulance to pick this man up, this soldier up. But I had enough energy in me to pull the pins out the tail ball which you drop down so soldiers can get out the back. And when I got out, I had to leave him there, because there was no way I could leave him there. I had to remove my brain gun, pick them both up, the ammunition in one hand, and drag that off. And as I was walking, someone stopped me, and I was shaking like the devil, and I never realised what had happened. He said, "You've got blood with you all over the cloud on the sand." So I had to be rushed into hospital, and sadly he was took into the hospital, and he'd already passed away. But they saved my life. That bullet is now still in me, went straight through the soldier and straight into me, and bent, as it went through my webbing, it bent the trouser button, because they were tin them days. That slowed that bullet, just that slowed it down a bit more, that it hit my spine and it stayed there. Now it's there today, because they couldn't find it, or they just sewed me up, thinking it, you get a ricochet in bullets, will hit your flesh and miss. In wartime, some soldiers get what you call ricochets, same as shrapnel. But this one, they thought it was a ricochet, but they never thought, well, there's a little hole in the canvas, or surely could they x-ray? They never did any in their hospital, in the army in Gaza. And it was so sad, but I was rushed in there, and I came back out of hospital 2 months, back to my camp, and I still didn't know, but I felt the pain. You do feel. I bent over for a long time before I could get back up, but no one ever realised that that bullet was still by my spine. And that's the time when we was moved. In that time, the Royal Sussex was going to go back to England. So that meant to me I haven't done my 3 years. I'd still have to go into another regiment. So I was about to be removed in the end of 1948 to Greece.
What regiment did you join next, and what happened?
Well, it was the Royal Sussex I was in, and they were going to go back to England. So it meant I've got to still do my 3 years. So they transferred me over to the East Surreys, and it was down in Greece, in Salonika. Now this is where we had more trouble there, that we had to use the army. The Royal Sussex went up into the mountains to guard an aqueduct. Now that aqueduct that was up the top of the mountain was the highest part of Greece. It's very cold in the winter as well. But at the top of there, we had to guard the water because that was the only pure water all Salonika ever had. And they tried to blow it up. So we had to be there to guard it. But we was being shot up by the Albanians. That was the part where we had to shoot back. And also other soldiers, various in villages. The Albanians killed some of the village Greek people that were living in the villages. But then come down to Salonika. We stayed in Salonika as well as up there. We had a camp in Salonika. But then we were going to be moved from up the top of the aqueduct over to Athens. So they moved us to Athens.
What happened in Athens?
What happened in Athens? Well, it was rather an unusual thing. We were still with the Greek army. We had to train the Greek army. But I was working in the East Surreys, and then they sent me down into Athens to work with a British military mission. Now, British military mission helps the Greeks, and also it has a lot of responsibilities for stores and everything else. And we're there again. I was put on a very top job of helping to do the security of the nappies when they had goods brought in for them, because we did have an army nappy. But it changed my life again, really, for the better, more. Because simple reason is, being in the British military mission, you have to have a special badge, and also you're paid a bit more, because you're like not a corporal, no rank, but you're doing something more senior in your own way, qualified to do that. Although I wasn't a good writer or something like that, my qualifications had that capabilities. And they selected me while I was in the British military mission in Athens. And we had some happy times, some good times down in the towns. And I'll tell you, some things do happen very funny. And you have to close your eyes to a lot. The Greeks are very kind people. And I've always liked them to this very day. And when you go in the forces, I've always respected the people as well. You don't think just because you carry a gun you're going to use it all the time. But when you're off duty, you appreciate the people that you've just fought to get the Germans out. That's what we was there for, to push the Germans out. And we did a lot for the Greek people, so we was helping them. And the strangest thing is when you go to the tavernas, they give you wine, some get a bit too high on you. Never drink too much wine, because you give you a splitting headache. It's terrible, you know. But I was never one for looking for trouble, and I do daft things, stupid. And the funny part is, when I used to go back to the barracks, I used to always drop too much, but never agree, just make my own walk for miles to go back to camp. And as I was walking in the town, I see the chestnuts being baked. You know, I don't know if you've ever ate them, have you? The chestnuts. You heat them up, and they're like eating a nut. And as I walked past this Greek with a tray with a chest, put my hand on and grabbed off. And oddly enough, I used to do that quite regularly. They got, well, creep away, you know, they're speaking in Greek. I can speak a little bit of Greek as well, funny enough. But the point was, it was so funny because they're great people. But then you see, when I got more interested with that job, they selected me to work with the MI5. Now that's a very unusual thing. For an ordinary army soldier like myself, there'd be 12 of us, different regiments, drivers and batmen and officers, all just this one officer and 10 men, went to Corfu. We had to sign the Secret Act. You couldn't tell anybody what was going on. Now that meant to say there's something there where they can dealing with agents, spies or something. But we had to be there to guard these or MI5, and then we had to sign a Secret Act. Said no way you was to tell anybody the Greeks were living on the island, and they're good people in Corfu and some very poor people. That was the saddest part about it. But their hospitality was outstanding. We got to know the villagers. We did we went to the tavernas, and that sort of I've always said, no way will I touch champagne. But they used to have vodka, and there's no way I would touch that. It's horrible. I used to just drink a baby sham. Now their baby sham was different to what we have in England, you know, a bit of wine. It's a bit of red wine, you know. And it tasted to me, I always used to say, it tasted like exhaust pipes, you know. It tasted that fumes of exhaust pipe, horrible. But I'll just have a sip of it and let them do what they did, but no way will I get involved in being drunk. And anyway, when I went back, we had the security of having to secure these, but we had transmitters put up top, on top of the villa. We was like living in a king's villa in Corfu, in Ipsos. Now, a lot of people go to Ipsos today, and it's not like when I was there, because they've commercialised it. But when I was there, the people were marvellous, absolutely so poor, they even invited us to the weddings, you know. And that was so good. And I took photographs on, black and white. I've always had an old box camera, and took photographs on. And some of them don't know that, but they do have it, you know, because they knew what I was, and they knew I appreciated the people. And so I got on so well. But sadly, one night, it became more of a danger. And we knew that we had to be very careful because we had communists in Albania, and also Greeks were over there, the communists of Greeks over there as well. But this one particular night, unbeknownst to us, 4 boats come over to blow us up. But when they got in the ship halfway across Corfu, they had a thunderstorm. Now Corfu does get very bad thunderstorms, very bad, heavy rain as well. They got drifted towards the town, halfway away, much further than they anticipated. Had they had not the storm, I wouldn't be here today. They started when they landed, and they got to work their way back halfway from the town, back up to Ipsos, and then come to us, our villa, and blow us up. There was no guards outside, all locked up in a villa because it's well secured, with never thinking you're going to be attacked. But I could hear the shooting going on half a mile away. I'm a very light sleeper, and these bangs like fireworks. Now there's some trouble here, so I alerted the soldiers. So they all got on, and the officer notified him. We've given the army pouches of all the ammunition, and we had to take over by getting firing positions on the top of the villa, you know, like you see the King's Towers, you know. And we had some up there, some down, some in the buildings, and all the way around to protect it. And thank goodness the Greek army, they landed by a Greek army when they was near Corfu, and they started shooting there. They killed some of the Greeks there as well. So that's how it started to get very bad. It came to the end where everything fell apart, that we had to move and go back to England because the Greek government said you must disband all your MI5 and get them out of Corfu. And so it was a goodbye. We went and had a goodbye, which one's got it in the book, by the way. We went and had a farewell party with the Greeks that we knew and invited them. They invited us down there, and we had drinks with them all, and it was our last day in Corfu. Going out on a tank landing craft, but the Greeks army, we donated them during the war, these landing crafts, and they put all our equipment, the MI5, all the lot had to leave. At the time, the Labour Party was in power after the war. But why did they suddenly start to send agents over there to start spying on after the war's finished? They've never put that on television in England. I'd probably leave that part
Doesn't
in.
matter.
All right, it's okay. Anyway, the point was, it was our farewell in Athens then. And I went onto the troop ships, and I had to fill in the form and say what regiment was you in. Well, they told me I was in the Surreys, but they lost that paper. And they all of a sudden shouted out and had me to go up to the office and say, Frank, we've not got your papers. Which regiment was you? I said, the Royal West Kents. I changed my regiment from the East Surreys back to the Royal West Kents. And I was happy. I think I was the happiest thing in. I was back in the Royal. We couldn't take them off, put them up, but I got the East Surreys still on. But they didn't realise that. And when they brought the forms on board ship to give to all the men, all the soldiers, they called my name out. Frank Smith, sorry, Frank Smith, raw Kent. When he took the two, ripped the one up and put that one in my pocket. And then my mate said, good God, what are you doing? That's how I got transferred. Now, coming back to England, I went into the very storm there on board troop ships. They do have a lot of rocking and everything. But anyway, coming back to England, we landed at Southampton. And you do a kit search. Now, as far as they were, they more or less, forget if you buy anything, they're not going to charge you or anything like that. But if they know you've had gold sovereigns, they'd be tipped off who's had them. Now, I don't do that, I don't have them sorting, because they used to bring a lot of gold sovereigns. At the time when they used to drop gold sovereigns to Greece, they could buy a car with them, you know, but they used to give their gold sovereigns to us, and we used to sell the cars. But I'm not very involved in that neither. Selling army cars and stealing things and even ammunition, probably, I don't know. But that's out of my thoughts. But anyway, the point was, when I came to Kent and took to the barracks, there was no real battalion there, only what you call a ghost battalion. And this ghost battalion only had, say, 12 to 13 soldiers there, and I was the 15 or 13. And one officer was in charge for that camp to make sure no one broke into it. And so while I was there, I thought, well, I've had enough with the army ones. I want to better my life. So war started in Korea, and then I started to think, well, I want to better myself. I've got to get out. So I wrote an application to transfer to the Royal Marines. So you marched into the officer, and there's a secretary there, and you marched in there, you salute and said, yes. I said, I wish to transfer to the Royal Marines, to join the Royal Marine. Oh, yes. Yes, all right. All right, I'll see what I can do for you. And all he did, when I walked out, the secretary told me, Frank, he threw it in the waste paper basket. But what did I do? I wrote to the War Office, and within 2 weeks, that officer had that letter. He was amazed, he's shocked. He said, Mr. Smith, Private Smith, you've got to go to the Royal Marines tomorrow. You know, just like that. And I was so shocked and happy that I've got to go to Deal to start my Royal Marine training.
What happened during Korea?
Doing all my training at the Royal Marines at Deal, right down to Exeter, Royal Marine Commandos, all that training. They put me on HMS Newcastle to go to Korea. And I fought in the Korea on 6-inch guns. And you do landings as well, and bombardments. It was a very sad, Korea was a very sad place to have lost so many soldiers and some Marines as well, throughout the whole area of North Korea, South Korea. We tried to save the South Koreans, and that's what we did. We even bombarded behind the lines of 200 miles back. But then, when we was doing all these bombardments, you get 10 salvos. That's one turret has 3 barrels, like you see during the war on a battleship. All fire on them 3 all at once. And you do 10 salvos onto a target, completely destroy it. Soldiers as well that are in it, the Chinese, the North Koreans that are in them, and the gun emplacements that we knocked out. Well, that shell blast has damaged my eardrum so bad I can hardly hear now, and I get a bit mixed up with people's words as well, you know. And that brought me back, that I had to be brought into the hospital at Hong Kong, and then they brought me home. Then I was sent to the South Sea hospital there, Naval Hospital, and they got me better within reason, and they had to discharge me because of the damaged eardrums and the bullet in the stomach. That was the thing that I told them, but no one ever believed that that bullet was still there. When I went to start work at the Austins, I complained about my back, that I had a bullet shot into my body, and they had the war people had me x-rayed twice, and they just did the neck and they never went down to the body lower down. When I was in the hospital at Salio and I had to have an x-ray now on the lower part of my body, they suddenly found the bullet there. That's when they found the bullet, and I've got that still in there today. But now I'm actually lose height, 6 foot, I'm down to 9'5". Now I'm also got my stomach where the spine has gone over to the left. When you get older you do get that problem. But I got that because the bullet was there and the swelling on one side of my stomach as well. So I've survived, and I've survived right up to this day. And so I painted and brought all my life's history into being, and so many paintings of history of 8 years service was made a good history of my life. And that's what I'm proud of doing, and even talking about it. It is hard to come out with some of the sad things I've had to say. Yeah. And I appreciate you listening to me as well.
Frank, I've really enjoyed talking to you.
And I'm so happy to be here to give you some of my story, and there's a lot more. And it's the willpower painting that's got me through all the stress. And a lot of people want to try and find something that can help them to get stress out of them if they can. It's not easy to get over losing so many things that have happened to my life and to my son and my wife. Losing them as well is bad enough. But I see all the soldiers just as bad. They've gone through it. You see the war films and everything else. It's so sad. No one ever wants to see another war, because that will be worse than ever. I'm sorry to say that. I just hope that we can try and get peace in this country and throughout the world.